Being raised in a Catholic church, this feels very naughty to be up here preaching to you. So it's certainly one of my favorite things about our faith is that we all get to, explore our ideas of faith, and I'm appreciative that you're indulging me in it. So thank you. Let me quickly, too, we have some special guests. Just want to welcome our guests from our Monday night Mama Gina group. We have some that we're trying to convert, so they're here today. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Always looking for new members. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to jump right in. I know you all are very learned people, and if you don't know who Shakespeare is, Google him when you get home. I don't want to bore you with things. I just want to hop right back in to what we were talking about during the message for all ages. Now, I've always liked Shakespeare and thought that his words were very exquisite to say. Actors like to say things like, the words drip like honey from your tongue, and things like that. But it's not just actors who appreciate Shakespeare. Actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but George Carlin, the famous comedian who passed away a few years ago, his grandfather actually liked Shakespeare so much that he sat and wrote out the complete works of Shakespeare, just copied it, just because he enjoyed doing it so much. Now, I probably won't ever take it that far, but I can honestly tell you that rarely does a day go by that I don't see a circumstance where these magical words written all these centuries ago are apropos to what's happening now. When a close friend wrongs me, I think what Julius Caesar thought when his pal Brutus was stabbing him. E tu, Brute, which in Latin is, of course, and you also Brute, or however you would translate that. I know all you parents out there with Christmas just a week away and your children filling your ears with I want, I want, I want, certainly can share the same sentiment of the newly ousted King Lear when he said, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. You can use that Christmas morning if you need to. It's King Lear. Members of the transgendered community that you welcome to this church struggle daily with what is best expressed by part of Richard III's opening speech. I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up. And who among us has ever driven around aimlessly listening to a mangled mixtape of love songs after a breakup, can't empathize with Orsino, the lovesick Duke in Twelfth Night, who opens the play with, if music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. That's actually a very mangled quote. People stop at the first part, like we kind of did today, but that's not the quote. He wants to sort of stuff himself with love, so he chokes on it. And finally, I can't help but chuckle to myself, and this is a true story. When I look around a gay bar, I think of the confusion that Banquo must have felt when he first encountered the witches, whereupon he said, "You should be women." And yet your beards forbid me to interpret you are so. So, of course, I thought I was very pretentious by saying these things over the years, but I found solace in the fact that I was not alone. In Nori Epstein's book, The Friendly Shakespeare, the literary professor had this to say on the topic. This is in the preface. But I'll say here that Shakespeare is good because he is true. When I first began to read the plays and poems, certain lines would evoke poignant memories and images. But gradually over the years, the reverse began to happen. For instance, I walked in Hyde Park last August. The air already had the sad, burnt smell of approaching autumn, and immediately I thought, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. I wasn't quoting, I was merely thinking what I felt. We can put Shakespeare's words in our mouths and be true to our own experience. So I guess it's still pretentious, but a smart lady does it too, so in my mind that makes it okay for me to do. Anne actually went out and bought this book when we first started dating, so she would know what the heck I was talking about all the time. I don't think she read it. Did you read it? No, you didn't read it. But she... but she bought it, so... One that loved not wisely, but too well. So this book gave me another example of being alive in a most unlikely place. I was at the Showboat coffee shop working on this, and I had this book out on the counter, and I was getting horrible service by this little dark-complected man. And he even brought me the wrong sauce for my chicken fingers, which those of you that know me, do not mess with my deep-fried things. And, I was waiting a long time, and I just wasn't happy with this man. And he finally corrected my sauce, and after he set down my honey mustard, he leaned over and whispered, "I like Christopher Marlowe better." And if you don't know who he is, he was one of Shakespeare's contemporaries. And he went on to say, he turned out to be Portuguese, so I'll do my best Portuguese. After he said that, he said, "Do you know it? Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships?" And he knew the whole thing, and I had it right in the middle of the coffee shop, and I thought, wow, if Shakespeare isn't alive and well in modern times, I don't know what is. So he got a nice tip. And I had one of those nice little Sex and the City movie moments that I rarely get, so I was happy to have that experience. So if I see Shakespearean overtones in all these little experiences, it stands to reason that I can also find them in our principles. Critically, as Tara Pepys immediately pointed out to me, probably a dumb idea from a critical perspective, but I can borrow from Shakespeare himself, Miss Tara. Shakespeare wrote in The Merchant of Venice, "Even the devil can cite scripture for his purpose." So I'd like to take a look at the first principle we'll be exploring today, which is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's number 4 in your programs if you're following along. We're going to go out of order. So, I was kidding. I meant on the back of the, forget it, it's a lost joke. I was just kidding. At first glance, to me, this principle looks pretty basic. But upon closer inspection, there are a half dozen real buzzwords in there. Is there a way to search for truth and meaning irresponsibly? How free really are we at UUCSJS? I know we have our pagan celebrations and Buddhist sanghas. Is that close? Sangha. Okay, and I know we have those things. But how many chairs would be filled with a service on Satanism or adventures of a UU nudist? Would the Gillies... I'm not doing that. There's a few people I'd like to nominate. Would the Gillies drive all the way from Cape May for a fundamentalist Baptist service? I don't think so. So back to George Carlin. Would I be able to do a service on how our 7 principles relate to his infamous set on the 7 dirty words you can't say on television? That'd be a heck of a service. No, Brian. So we're free enough to say Happy Hanukkah to members of the congregation that we know are Jewish, but even when we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that a member is Christian, we still say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. Even my social justice efforts are juxtaposed at all times. They contain their own brand of slings and arrows. I rescued a pit bull from Hurricane Katrina, and that made me feel pretty good, until that same dog killed 2 possums in my backyard. At one time I had 5 dogs, the smallest being 35 pounds, so I needed a very ungreen SUV to cart them around. I feed stray cats on the boardwalk, but keeping them alive is threatening the piping plover population. And then the recycling here. I mean, there are so many buckets in that kitchen that oftentimes I just give up and put the napkin in my pocket and take it home and throw it away. And then that's a true story. I think, well, it's paper, it should be recycled, but wait, there's food on it, it should be composted, and I just take it home. To be or not to be, what? I don't know. Okay. So in that vein, we are going to take a look at arguably the most famous speech in the English language, which is Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. Now, I call on you to have a little bit of what we call in the theater suspension of disbelief. I know we have a lot of dark themes in this speech, but that's not really what I want you to focus on. You know, let's look at the struggle. Let's look at Hamlet having this Garden at Gethsemane moment, you know, a crisis of faith, a moment of spiritual confusion. Let's look at it in the context of Laurence Olivier's 1948 movie version of Hamlet. The first line is, "This is a story of a man who cannot make up his mind."
Against the sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep. No more. And by sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks the flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. For who would suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? To die, to sleep. No more. And by that sleep, for in that sleep, to say, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream, and in that to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Ah, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that gives calamity to so long a life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns, the patient merit of the unworthy taste? When he himself, his quietest might be, with a bare bodkin, who would Bartles bear to sweat and groan under a weary troubles we already have than to fly off to others we know not of. Thus, conscience makes cowards of us all. And thus, the native hue of resolution is simply over by the pale cast of thought. And enterprises of great pitch and moment, with this regard, they're what? And with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
I hate these lavender microphones making so much noise. I'm sorry. All right, how do I look now? Deb Dagavarian's doctoral robe. She let me borrow. Now I feel like I'm in church. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? Do you believe in the back row there? Do you believe? Well, in the immortal words of actor and performance artist Stephen Burkhoff, in every actor is a Hamlet struggling to get out. So the second principle we're going to look at today is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Shakespeare is going to aid us in looking at this through Portia's speech in The Merchant of Venice. If you don't know the play, it's a great play to take a look at. To me, the ideas of fairness and moral high ground are just turned on their heads by the end of the play. And Shylock gets treated pretty badly at the end, too, so it's something to look at. Excuse me. Anyway, if you don't know the main plot of this play, it centers around a moneylender who loans money to a guy he doesn't like with the stipulation that if he doesn't pay back the loan, Shylock, the moneylender, gets to carve a pound of flesh from the borrower, poor Antonio's side. This is also known as Bank of America's business model. The 99% would have had a field day on Shylock, I can tell you guys that. Where's Angela? Angela, can you organize a Occupy Verona for me while I do this speech, please? Well, anyway, in this speech, we hear Portia disguised as a male jurist trying to plead for mercy for her pal Antonio. This is Act 4, Scene 1, and thus why I'm so enrobed. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mighty. It bestows the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this scepter's sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute of God himself. Therefore earthly power doth then show likest gods, when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. So now again, on the surface, seems pretty cut and dry. Liberty and justice for all, right? And it's easy to live when you picture faces of immigrants arriving on Ellis Island, or consider the moral dilemma of a man who steals a loaf of bread only to feed his starving family. But I have to tell you, when my pit bull is sitting on my lap and Michael Vick takes the field to fulfill his $100 million contract, I can honestly say there is not one atom of my being that is thinking that the quality of mercy is not strained. Nor am I thinking that it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. I am not there yet. And I have a long way to go to live these principles effectively. So I hope you will enjoy the ride with me. Speaking of rides, I was in the car with Teresa McReynolds, and a semi-truck almost killed us. And as I was rolling down my window to yell an expletive, Teresa went, "Bless him." And I thought to myself, she is operating on a completely different level than I am. So I have something to look forward to, I guess, if I hang around you all enough. So I hope to see you all back here on January 8th for part 2. The working title is The Muse of Fire Strikes Back. I don't know if it's in the budget to encase Richard in that Harrison Ford pose, but we're working on it. So I thank you for listening and have a blessed day. So mote it be.